Okay, so now we're ready to get started with our bass song, which really won't be much of a song, more of a skeleton that we can edit and build upon to morph into the number of different styles later. But this is just to keep some continuity. So we're going to keep things relatively generic so it can be as flexible as possible. That's not to say complexity necessarily limits stylistic choices, but we'll be bouncing around genres quite a bit, so we'll try to keep things simplified when we can. Just so we have a few musical themes or hooks and things like that that we can use as building blocks down the line. Now we're going to do this in the key of A minor, since it's the relative minor of C major. So it's all white keys, easy to keep track of. And minor, since more often than not, that's the feel electronic music generally leans towards. However, we'll see a few variations on that, and maybe go through a few concepts relating to modes and a couple other music theory sort of things, but nothing too overbearing. Just a few theoretical tidbits here and there can be fun to spice things up. But at any rate, let's get a few sounds and just some basic stuff going here. So I'll go over and insert GMS to start with. And I'll pull up a default sound. Completely average saw. Let's add a few unison voices. We'll go with 7. Make them stereoized a little bit. Maybe a little bit more detune. Change the envelope a little bit. A little bit more release. Okay. And we'll add a touch of a filter envelope. Just so there's a little bit of movement there. And again, this is just a basic little thing here. Kind of a super saw sort of sound that we'll just use to play some chords here and there. Maybe get a bit of noise in it. That's pretty common and widely used all around electronic music. And again, any of these sounds can obviously be done with any synths that have the similar capabilities, and you can play with whatever character you might want to add to these sounds as well. But that's a decent little sound we can start with there. Now let's get another going. We'll use a 3x Osc, another simple synthesizer that we'll just make some little bleepy sort of sounds with. Let's make ourselves a square sort of sound. I'll reset these so everything's on the same octave. Make that a triangle. Yeah, okay. Add ourselves a volume envelope. A filter envelope. A nice little blippy sound. Let's change the fine pitch on some of these so we get a little bit of richness to it. Maybe some phase randomness. Sure. And that's a nice little universal blip that can be anywhere. And let's get ourselves another 3x Osc, and with this, we're going to just turn all of our oscillators down so we have a nice little sub bass. I'm going to make one of them into a triangle and then filter out some of the top. Just so it's not a pure sine, I like to have a few extra harmonics maybe that we can play with again later. But there's a bit of light sound design. Let's kind of rename these. Saw chord. This was our blip. And this is a sub. We don't need that default sampler channel anymore, so I'll delete that real quick. So those are a few basic little sounds that you can kind of hear anywhere in electronic music, and it's a pretty simple bit of sound design. Well, let's now take those and see what we can make out of them. With our blip, let's make that into a pattern first. We'll start on the A. We want something kind of catchy with it, with a bit of a rhythm to it. We'll start with A. That's good enough to work with. Let's kind of slice around. Relatively simple. Let's Control B, duplicate that over. I'll move this down. That can be a nice little basis. I think I'm going to slow it down. We'll do this somewhere around 120 for now. And that's going to change as we change genres, but for now, that's kind of what I was thinking. Nice and simple. Let's drop that pattern in the playlist. We'll rename it Blip. And we'll start another pattern that we can make some chords in. So let's do that in the piano roll. Okay, that's a good chord to start with. Let's type that in. And this is just a minor chord with that A as the bass note for A minor scale, just sticking to those white keys. And all these rhythms are probably going to change as we do some things. I just want to get some chords in here. I kind of had something I thought up a little bit. And this is nothing too complex, just kind of sticking to a bit of movement on the bass note and then building a chord on top of it. Which, since we're in this key, we can just stick to those white keys, as I said. Okay, nice little idea there. We want to slice everything there so we can go back up a little. Give it a bit of something so it can kind of loop. Okay, nice and simple. Let's just take that lowest note from in here. I'm going to highlight, Control C, make a sub pattern. Go in the piano roll, Control V, and then we have a nice little sub part there, probably a little loud, but we'll get to mixing later. And I think from there we basically have a start point that we can then launch off in a bunch of different directions, but stick with a few of these basic themes, basic chords, basic rhythms. But this is kind of enough to have that simplistic starting point as a foundation to build upon later. So we'll use these few ideas and then add elements and tweak a few things here and there to make it fit in different styles in the next few videos. So I will see you then.